wet, humid summer day, getting close to August. So thanks everybody for being here this morning for the mindful mat Pilates practice. And as I've mentioned to the live group, the things that you will need today would be your block set, a blanket or a pillow, and your non-elastic yoga belt. I'm feeling like today I want to do some things to sort of loosen us up a little bit, stretch us a little bit, as well, of course, as strengthening. And in particular today, I think that I want to focus on some little bit of rotation and some side bending, as well as spinal extension. Okay. And so let's go ahead and begin on our backs. And let's begin. If you'd like to use a pillow to start, that would be fine. Okay, so if you want to use a pillow, use a pillow. If you don't need a pillow, just come to laying on your back, on your mat. And then let's go ahead and begin. Once you feel like your body is nicely arranged, laying on your back on the floor with your head either on the floor or on a pillow, go ahead and stretch out that left leg. And then bring the right leg into tabletop and take your hands around the back of that thigh and see if you can do that without interlacing your fingers. So your hands are actually separate, right? One kind of beside the other. And you're just holding your leg, not pulling it unnecessarily tight. We don't want to pinch the front of the hip, right? We're just holding the leg in a very mild feeling of a stretch for the front of the left hip, okay? And, even something as simple as holding one leg to bring the knee gently towards the chest and to get a stretch for the opposite hip, right? We still want to think about how we use our muscles. So my core is a little bit active as I'm holding this stretch. And I have intentionally positioned my arms so that my elbows are out and not down, right? And there's a reason for that. Of course there is. When my elbows are out and I'm holding my leg, I can feel the connection to the muscles of my chest. And so that's what we want to feel when we do this knee to chest pose or this hip stretch. My feet are in plantar flexion, which is a pointed orientation. And I am kind of doing an intentional feeling of lengthening or elongating my left leg. And then drawing my right leg towards my chest. And I'm really taking my time to develop this. Right? So it's just, I'm not straining my muscles. I'm just easing myself a little deeper, deeper, deeper into this stretch. And eventually I'm going to get to a point where I just can't bring my leg any closer to the front of my body. And that's the end of the stretch point. And then I'll release my right leg all the way down to the floor. And then draw the left leg into tabletop, right? Reach around and take a hold of the back of the thigh so that the hands are not interlaced, fingers are not interlaced. Don't worry about trying to press your shoulders against the floor. Let's go ahead and like untaboo that, right? So you don't have to have your shoulders on the floor for everything that you do, okay? In this instance, we're contracting the muscles in the front of the chest to begin to gently draw the left thigh or knee towards the chest. And when you contract the muscles of your chest, it naturally moves your shoulders forwards. That's what happens when you contract your chest. So let's not get too hung up about always thinking that we have to have our shoulders on the floor, because it doesn't apply to everything that we do, right? So there is a mild feeling of lift. I'm not trying to lift my shoulders. I'm trying to get my arms and my chest to work together to produce this feeling of stretch for my right front hip. And then I'm adding a little feeling of elongating that right leg as I hold that right leg straight and cradle the left leg. Let's give that one more breath. And then release that left leg all the way down to the floor. Just kind of wiggle everything out, shake everything out. Now, let's go ahead and bring the right leg back into tabletop. Again, take your hands around the back of the thigh, but this time, interlace your fingers, if that feels good to you. And rather than pulling your leg towards your chest, draw your leg away from your chest so that it produces a slight sensation of stretch from your neck across the top of your shoulders. So you're using your leg now, you're moving your leg away from your chest. You've got your fingers interlaced, so it's stretching out your fingers, it's stretching your arms long, and it's pulling your shoulders down away from your ears. This feeling of moving your leg away from you. I even feel the stretch in my forearms. And the one thing that I'm finding uncomfortable is my wedding ring is getting a little bit smashed in my fingers, but I'm just going to deal with that. So you're actually actively moving your right leg away from you, but you're holding on to it at the same time, producing a stretch for your shoulders and your arms. Let's give that one more breath. And then we're going to release the fingers and shake out the fingers, relax the legs for a second, and then we'll do the same side. So we're using our muscles and a certain position in order to produce a stretch for a specific area. So we bring the left leg to tabletop. Again, interlace the fingers this time, if that works for you, around the back of the thigh. And rather than pulling on the leg is going to move away from the chest, but we're not letting go of it, and it pulls my shoulders down. Pulls my shoulders down, and wow, this is a very different side. So on this side, I feel a lot of stretch in my left upper arm. That's where my deltoid muscle is. I didn't feel that on my right side, but I feel that on my left side. I'm going to go easy, right? I just want to encourage those muscles to elongate, but I don't want to initiate some type of a gripping response, right? So we want to ease into this effort, ease into this stretch. Let's give that one more breath. Wow, I'm getting a lot more response on this side, all the way down my arm now to my wrist. And then I'm going to unleash my leg and just shake everything out. Shake out the fingers, shake out the hands, and shake out the legs. Okay, now again, let's bring the right leg up into a tabletop position. Take the hands around the back of the thigh, your choice, whether you interlace or not, and just let the leg rest in tabletop. Let's focus on the right ankle. So without moving any other part of your leg, let's begin to circle that right foot. You're going to feel muscular activity in your lower leg. That's the portion of your leg that's below your knee. Because a lot of the muscles that you recruit to circle your foot run through your shin and your calf. And then let's reverse the direction of circling the foot while we maintain a stable knee and a stable hip. Again, as I hold my leg, my shoulders are a little lifted off the floor, and that's just how it is when I hold my leg in tabletop. And then let's pause and release that right leg down to the mat. Bring the left leg to tabletop. Your choice how you hold your leg, but keep it tabletop, right? And then let's begin to circle that left foot without introducing movement of the knee or the hip. So you feel all those stringy muscles in your lower leg and in your foot are working to produce this circle. And then let's reverse that. And then pause and release that left leg down. Now let's bend both of the knees to start. bring the right leg into tabletop and take a hold of the back of the thigh without pulling your leg towards your chest. Now, if you know that your hamstrings are very, very tight, keep your left leg just like this. Keep your left leg bent, because what we're going to do is extend the right leg up and dorsiflex the foot, and then relax that effort and plantar flex the foot. So as the leg straightens, we dorsiflex, which makes your foot flat, kind of Fred Flintstone, and then we point like a dancer as we bend the knee. Now, if you have the flexibility and you want to straighten your left leg on the mat while you work out some of the tightness of your right leg, then you can hold your left leg straight on the floor. But if that's too much, then bend that left leg. Let's do a couple more of these without trying to pull on your right leg. You're just kind of holding it steady in tabletop, extending and flexing your knee and extending and flexing your ankle. Let's do that one more time. Flex the leg and then release the right leg to the floor. Now bend both knees, feet flat. Take the left leg into tabletop without pulling on it, right? If you know you're really tight, keep the right leg bent. If you're not so tight, straighten it out. And now you're going to extend your left leg, flexing your foot, and then point your foot when you bend your knee, right? So by flexing the foot when we extend the leg upwards, we are trying to connect the stretch all the way up and down the back of the leg. From the heel, really from the bottom of the foot all the way to the pelvis, along the back of the leg. And we're using the muscles on the front of the leg, the whole front of the leg, from the foot to the hip, to produce the motion. And let's do one more. And then release that left leg all the way back down to the mat. Now, arms on the floor, slightly wide, not too narrow, right? Let's bring the right leg into a tabletop position with nice muscle tone in the core. Now let's work on circling at the hip. So keeping the leg bent, right, the knee bent, begin to circle at your hip socket without introducing a rocking side to side motion in your torso. So you're using your abdominal core to keep your torso stable. Let's take one more hip circle in this direction, and then let's reverse the direction of those hip circles, keeping the knee flexed. And let's take one more circle around. And then pause and extend that right leg down. Now, with your arms on the ground, didn't mention this in the beginning, but it's not too late. Now we can work on shoulders on the floor. Arms are on the ground. You might have to reposition. My mat is so sticky and I'm wearing this tank, so I've had to literally have to like lift myself to reposition my shoulder blades flat on the ground, right? And now I'm gonna keep my shoulders on the mat, bring my left leg into tabletop, and keeping the knee flexed, begin to introduce hip circles without introducing rocking side to side, right? So circling the leg without introducing a lot of side to side movement in my torso. Let's take one more circle around and then reverse the direction of those circles. They can be small, medium, or large. Just make sure that you feel the connection of your leg to your core. And again, let's take one more circle around and then release that left leg all the way down and shake out your legs. Now, let's go ahead and grab a yoga block and get rid of the pillow if you've been using a pillow. Okay, we're going to go into shoulder bridge. So we're going to place that yoga block between our legs, close to your knees. Find a spot where you feel like you can hang on to it the best. You don't want the block to tilt sideways or get disheveled. So you want to pick a good spot for hanging on to that block. Bring your arms down alongside your body, right, with your palms on the floor, and tilt your skull so that your chin is slightly down, elongating through the back of your neck, and reach your shoulders back into the mat, right? Let's take a deep breath in. And on the exhale, starting with the tailbone, let's begin to lift the spine away from the mat. As we press upwards, we allow our weight to transfer into the back of our shoulder region. Take a breath, and now reverse that, coming back down through your spinal column, pausing at the bottom to take a deep breath in, and on the exhale, rising up, coming up bone by bone, rising up. Feel that weight transfer into the back of your shoulder area, and then reversing and coming back down. As you rise up, it's going to be easier for you to press your shoulders back. And as you go back down, you're going to feel how your shoulders want to peel away from the floor. So what we're going to do is we're just going to work on minimizing the change in the shoulders. Try to keep them in a steady position and focus on the movement of our spine. Let's take two more. Rising up through the spinal column, shifting our weight into the back of our chest as we come up to the top, and then reversing and going back down. And let's take that one more time. All the way up through the spine. Loosening up any stickiness that you feel, and then lowering all the way back down to the bottom. Great. Now, let's take the block flat and slip it behind your sacrum, which is the part of your spine that just fits like a keystone between the two halves of your pelvis. So when you have the block in the right spot, it feels somewhat flat because that's the basic shape of that bone. It's flat, okay? And then your arms are going to come out a little bit wider. And I'm going to leave it up to you to determine how you want to rotate the arms. If you want them turned up or turned down, it doesn't matter. You can do either, okay? But let's keep our shoulders on the mat. Now, let's go ahead and bring the legs into tabletop and hold the legs together. We're on a tiny little platform here, so our rotation is going to be minimal, okay? So with the legs in a tabletop position, on the exhale, I want you to rotate your pelvis a little bit to the right without falling off of your block. Come back to the center. And as you exhale, rotate your pelvis a little bit to the left. And come back to the center. So as you turn your pelvis, rotate your pelvis, you'll feel a weight transfer. The right side of your pelvis comes up a little as you rotate into the back of the left. Then come back onto your sacrum. And as you rotate to the right, you'll feel your left hip come up a little bit. And then you're back onto your sacrum. So we're just doing a little bit of movement, a little bit of rotation from side to side. Maintaining contact with the shoulders to the mat. And let's take that one more time from side to side. Finishing with rotation to the left. And then back to the center. We'll place those feet down onto the mat. Lift the hips off of the block and place the block back between your knees. Now, double check that you've got space on either side of you for opening up your arms. I'm a little too close to my reformer, so I'm going to move out. There we go. I'm going to clear it now, okay? So we're going to come back into a bridge orientation, but this time we're going to start with our arms straight up into the air. And we're going to press up into a shoulder bridge, letting our weight transfer onto the back of our chest, primarily firing the glutes to hold the pelvis up into the air like a tightened hammock. Now, let's begin to circle those arms with your fingertips pointing up towards the ceiling. And just let that start to mobilize your shoulder joints and warm the muscles of your shoulder area. And then pause and reverse the direction of those circles with your fingers pointing up towards the ceiling. And then let's pause with the arms up and lower the spine all the way back down to the mat. Now open your arms out a little bit wider. You're still holding them up off of the floor. Raise yourself back up into your shoulder bridge, letting your weight transfer into the back of your chest and feeling a nice contraction across the back of your hips. Your glutes are firm. Now let's circle with our fingertips aiming more out to the sides. Again, feeling that work in the muscles that connect the arms to the trunk. And then let's pause and reverse the direction of that circling. Don't let those glutes go to sleep. And then let's pause and lower ourselves all the way down. Let those arms rest out wide. Just open up your legs and let your block fall out. And then you can bring your legs together and come up into a tabletop position. So now we're going to go into another rotation. Okay, so arms are out. This time the palms are up, legs are together. And as we exhale, we're going to rotate the pelvis. Now you have more room to rotate. Come back to center on the sacrum and then rotate to the left. Now I want you to pay attention to the back of your shoulder area and keep your shoulders on the ground as you rotate. So your ability to keep your shoulders on the floor is going to determine the amount that you twist. If you cannot keep your shoulders on the floor, then you're twisting too far. Now, I'm actually using the muscles on the back of my chest to keep or to help maintain contact with the floor, right? I don't want to tighten the front of my chest because that's going to lift my shoulders away from the ground. I want to start to work on engaging the muscles on the back of my chest to maintain that contact with the ground. Let's take this one more time in each direction, rotating to the right, coming back to the center, and rotating to the left, coming back to the center, and then placing those feet down on the mat, stretching out your legs to open up those hip flexors and giving your legs a nice wiggle and a jiggle. Okay. Now, let's go ahead and grab both of our yoga blocks. So you've got both blocks. You may decide that you only want to use one block, but I'm going to show you how to do this with one block or with both blocks. So we're going to use the block to put us into a bridge position. Right now, if you have any challenges with a high bridge, then one block is probably the right block for you. If you don't have any issues, then stick that second block underneath you. So you've got both blocks underneath your sacrum. And that is going to get you pretty close to a full bridge. It's not 100%, but it's nice to have that support. Okay. Now bring your arms not too close to your blocks, right? But not super wide, kind of somewhere in the middle. This time with your palms down. And with your palms down, I still want you to feel some activation of the muscles in the back of your chest. because I want you to kind of press your shoulders and upper arms into the floor and feel what that does to the back of your chest. Okay, so we're working in extension. Okay, now with your legs in parallel, I'd like you to take your right leg and extend it all the way up. So it's straight up into the air and your foot is pointed. So that comes from your ankle and goes all the way through your toes. Now, keeping your foot in this orientation, let's slowly lower the leg down and then bring the leg back up. We're keeping the foot steady. So the muscles that control the up-down movement are through the pelvis. They are the iliacus and the psoas, which connect the thigh bone to the spine. So we need to feel that our core has something to do with this movement. But we're not moving the pelvis, we're moving through the pelvis. Which sometimes is a hard concept to get your head wrapped around. Lowering the leg, spine to thigh, raising the leg, thigh to spine. Let's do that one more time. Lowering and raising, and then release the right foot to the floor. Okay, so now let's take the left leg straight up into the air, plant or flex the foot. Okay, and same thing, we want to feel the connection thigh to spine, lowering and raising, right? We feel this nice articulation in the hip socket as the leg pivots up and down. And the strength that we have for this movement, right, extends down from the spine, through the pelvis, and to the inner thigh. The rest of the leg muscles are just keeping the leg in this beautiful shape, this nice straight, long, toned line. Let's do two more. Hinging up and down. And one more time, hinging down and up. And then release that left foot to the floor. Good. Now let's bring the right leg into tabletop. The left leg into tabletop, keeping nice spacing between the legs, and make sure that having the legs in tabletop doesn't cause you to lose your extension in your spine. Now, taking it, a good tempo so it doesn't get messy, we're going to alternately extend and flex the legs without letting the legs collapse, right? So they're straightening and coming back, extending and retracting. Spine to inner thigh to spine. Trying to develop that iliopsoas strength. Let's take it one more time for each leg. Pause in tabletop and place those feet down onto the mat. Right? You can shake out your legs a little bit to release. And we're going to do one more effort here that has a more flowing feel. Let's bring the legs back up into that tabletop position. Now, go into that alternating flexion and extension, but now turn that into bicycle. Turn that into bicycle. So it gives it a little bit more interest. We're still extending and retracting, but we're turning circles. And then let's reverse that, pedaling the bicycle. Nice strong core to support you. Good strong hip flexors. Let's take it one more time around, pausing in tabletop, and then placing the feet back down onto the mat. Lift your pelvis up and slide the blocks all the way out from underneath. Now, If you'd like to grab your pillow, you're welcome to. Get your body centered in the middle of your mat, and then scooch your feet apart as wide as your mat is and take your arms out completely into a T, right? Let your knees be as wide as your feet, okay? And let's begin a slow tilting of the legs that introduces a little bit of rotational feeling in the trunk. And I want you to notice that as the legs tilt closer to the floor, you've got to allow your back to soften, right? If your back is tight, then when the legs tilt, it's going to pop up your spine. Your belly will pop up towards the ceiling. So each time your legs tilt deeply to one side, see if you can soften your back and firm your abdominals. And what that's going to do then is transfer the stretch to the fronts of your hips and the sides of your hips. Let's take that one more time to each side, tilting to the right and tilting to the left, and then come back to the center. Now, the arms, right? So I'm going to sit up for a moment so that you can see this clearly rather than trying to figure it out looking at me laying on the floor. So when you're laying on the floor, right, what I would like you to do is to start to play with this really cool thing that you can do with your arms, which is you can twist your arms forwards and you can twist your arms backwards. Okay, now what I'd like you to do is to expand your sense of connection, the sense of what it means to twist the arm. I could do a small twist that comes directly from the shoulder joint that doesn't do anything to my trunk, right? But that's not what I'm interested in here. What I'm interested is in a twist that really brings you all the way into the muscles of your trunk on the front, and a twist that really brings you all the way into the muscles on your back. So you feel a twist that changes the sensation in your collarbone, and you feel a twist that changes the placement of your shoulder blade, right? So now that you have seen that, right, you can start to play with that on the floor, turning all the way forward and all the way backwards, so that we feel the change, not just in the shoulder joints, but all the way to the center of the trunk. Now, the other thing I'd like you to notice is what is happening to your rib cage and subsequently to your thoracic spine when you do this. When you twist your arms forwards, it kind of causes your rib cage to flex forwards and your spine to sink into the ground. And when you twist your shoulders backward, when you twist your arms backwards in this way, you feel how it wants to lift your rib cage up and arch your upper back, right? So let's play with that a little bit, right? Connecting the feeling of twisting the arms to moving the rib cage and moving the spine. Just allowing it to be as organic as possible. You'll even feel how your head and neck want to do something as well. So allow your head and neck to be free as you rotate. Now pause, okay? Let's go ahead and rotate one arm in one direction and the other arm in the other direction. Again, in this way where you feel it all the way through your collarbone and your shoulder blade. So when you're twisting one arm forward, you're twisting the other arm backwards. And now what I notice in my ribs is a movement from right to left. As I'm twisting my arms all the way into the center of my body, my head wants to roll and my ribs want to swing from side to side. And so you're going to encourage that, right? You're going to get a really nice movement. The other thing that's happening because I'm stuck to my sticky mat is I'm getting actually a little bit of kind of a weird massage for the center of my upper back, which actually feels kind of good. Now, let's pause that movement. Let's pause that movement for a second here. And let's include the movement of the legs that we did previously. So we are learning how to twist our arms in opposite directions and have that connect to the trunk so that we feel this kind of nice sloshing in the rib cage. And we're going to notice that as we tilt the legs from side to side, we get this nice kind of sloshing feeling through the pelvis. So the end result is we're freeing up the body and we're really encouraging good movement through the trunk. So with your feet wide, your knees wide, your arms wide, let's take a few moments to figure this out. We're going to start with the legs. So the legs are going to tilt from side to side. And now we're going to begin to twist the arms opposite from each other. Don't worry about whether or not you're doing it the right way with your legs. Just start doing it. Just start doing it. And what does your head want to do? Does it want to go with your legs or does it want to go against the twist of your legs? Whatever it wants to do, you just do it. Don't worry about it. Just start. Everything is moving. Everything is moving. Now pause, tilt it to one side, okay? And whichever direction your head is turned, roll it the other way. Whatever direction your legs are turned, tilt it the other way. Now, get everything going again. So what that will have done is change the sequence of how your head is turning relative to your arms and what your legs are doing relative to your head. And you just go with it. Twisting all the way to the center line of the body. Let's do that one more time from side to side. And then let's come back to the center and let's turn coming off of our sticky backs and coming up onto our hands and knees. Okay, so setting ourselves up in a strong quadruped position, that means all fours, right? And you do whatever variation of this that you need to do in order to be in this position, okay? So what we don't want to do now is lose some of that freedom that we just got in the body, but we also don't want to sacrifice our strength. So what we're really looking for here is a more supple quality of strength. And we're going to take that into flexion and extension of the spine, which is referred to as the cat and the cow. And I'd like you to allow your shoulders to move in a kind of a sympathetic way with your spine. And what I mean by that is when we flex our spine, the natural inclination of our shoulders is to gently move upwards, not with an awful feeling hunch, but they just kind of slide upwards when we go into flexion. And then when we go into extension, our shoulders slide downwards. So our shoulders move compatibly with our spinal movement. So let's go ahead and work with that. When we flex the spine, which is abdominals, we just allow that gentle shift in our shoulder position. And as we extend our spine, we encourage that downward shift of our shoulder position, right? The upward shift comes quite easily to us. And so we just want to make sure that we're not overly doing the upward motion, but the downward motion is not quite so easy for us in extension. So we need to work on that, right? So when I'm going into flexion, I sort of almost feel like I'm pushing my hands away from me. And as I shift into extension, I feel like I'm pulling my hands towards my knees. That helps my shoulders to go down. And when I go into flexion, it's like I'm pushing my hands away from my knees and pulling my hands towards my knees. Let's take one more. Just feeling that companion piece with the arms and shoulders. And then coming back to center. Let's come off of our hands, grab both of our blocks, and come on to our side. And we're going to lay out in a long line on our side using one block to support the head and one block to support the other hand if you need it in front of you and your bottom arm is projected upwards. Okay, so now coming on to your side, making sure that there is a nice alignment between your rib cage and your pelvis, that you're not twisted through your trunk. Okay, let's rest our top hand on the block, allowing or encouraging this shoulder to stay away from the ear. And then bring your leg up so your leg is even with your the side of your body, not above or below. Okay. And so what we're going to work on is our leg circles on us on the side, feeling the work through the side and back of our hip joint region. Keeping our leg nicely toned, we begin to do the circles. Now, if your circles are too big, my guess is that you're probably twisting a little bit and you're using the front of your hip as your strength point. If you keep the circles slightly smaller and stay true to being on your side, you're going to feel the work in these cranky muscles on the side of your hip and in your glutes. Let's take one more circle, pause, and then reverse the direction of the circle. Keeping the leg nicely toned, foot is pointed, and working through the side and back of the hip region. Let's take one more circle, and then we're going to pause and let that leg rest. Okay, now let's stack the legs, right? Decrease the amount of flexion in the hip, so you're not in a tabletop with your bottom leg. Your knees are a little lower, and your feet are kind of back, more even with the back side of your body. And we're going to do a little bit of rotation. So we're going to keep our legs together as if we no longer had two separate legs, but we have one leg, okay? And we're going to use our core to initiate this rotation, okay? So it's not really now in the family of a hip movement, even though your pelvis is going to move. It's more about using your oblique abdominal muscles and your lumbar muscles of your back to produce rotation, okay? So legs together, our first rotation is a forward rotation. So your feet come off the ground and you feel this effort, right, in your abdominals and in your back, and then you lower down, right? So you could think of this as kind of a rocking rotation for your lower to mid body. And I just want to feel that work coming from my trunk to rotate the weight of my lower body. Let's do one more forward rotation and then pause. And now we're going to do backwards rotation. So keeping the legs connected, feet on the ground. The side of your lower leg is coming off the ground, using your trunk muscles to twist backwards. Now I'm applying some pressure into this block to correspond with the effort. And so I'm also making sure that when I press against the block, that does not cause me to raise my shoulder towards my ear. My legs are locked together, inner thighs. Thank you. And I'm using the muscles of my core region to rotate. Let's do one more. And then lowering all the way down. Let's go ahead and straighten out both of our legs to finish with a full side bend. Okay, so again, keeping your hand on the block, making sure your shoulder is in a neutral placement, right? And on the exhale, we're going to bend the body sideways and then lower back down. A nice effort for the muscular line that goes down the side of the body and down the side of the back. And let's do two more. Bending sideways. Making sure that your spine isn't stiff so that you're not leaning sideways. You actually feel that flexion. Really nice. Let's go ahead and change to the other side. So we'll start with the bottom leg in tabletop. One block to support the head and the other block for the hand, the top hand. Okay. And then we're just going to make sure that we are truly on our side so that when we do these side leg circles, we're not feeling the work from the front of the body, but from the side of the hip and the back of the hip. So let's begin the leg circles, maintaining good muscle tone in the leg to keep it straight. And then we're strengthening these grumpy muscles that we have on the side of the hip. Let's take one more circle in this direction, and then we'll reverse the direction of the circles. Still working from the side. Make sure you don't change your orientation and start working from the front. And we'll do one more circle in this direction. And then we'll set that leg down on top of the bottom leg, and we'll open up a little bit from that tabletop hip flexion, so we're not quite so tight in the hips, and the feet end up a little bit better aligned with the back side of the body. And then we're going to keep those legs locked together and work on rotation. So we're using the muscles of our trunk in conjunction with our legs and hips to produce this forward rotation. So we're kind of rocking into the side of the legs as the feet come away from the ground. And we feel the strength of that effort primarily coming from the trunk, but of course there's more involved to it. Keeping the legs together, right, is important. And let's do one more forward rotation. And then we'll move into backward rotation. So the feet stay on the ground. You're probably going to need to load the block. So check what you're doing with your top shoulder as you rock your knees away from the floor and rotate through your trunk. Now we're not rotating our entire torso. We're trying to rotate, but keep your upper body as square as possible. So my top hand pressing into the block is sort of creating a nice muscular tension around my chest that gives me some stability. Let's do one more of these backward rotations. And then we'll straighten out both of our legs. And we're going to finish with a full body side bend. So again, keeping those legs together so that we feel the effort coming up into the core. We're going to press into the block. and bend to the side and then lower back down. And we're looking for a way to organize the body through smart muscular recruitment. And we're also looking for a way to maintain mobility. So strength and mobility, always seeking to find that balance. Not too much stiffness, not too much looseness, just the right amount. Let's do one more side bend and then lower all the way down. Now let's turn and come onto our stomach, setting the yoga blocks off to the side. Separating your feet just a little so that your legs are in parallel. Okay, the tip of your nose facing towards the mat and your arms down alongside your body. Now, if you have the ability to have your palms on the floor, that's what I would like you to do. But if you cannot be in this position with your palms on the floor, then you can turn your palms up if you have to do that. Okay, now let's just set the tone here, right? Literally the tone of our muscles. So notice that if you don't do anything with the muscles on the back of your chest when you're in this position, your shoulders sag towards the ground. So what I'd like you to do is to use the muscles on the back of your chest to move your shoulders away from the ground so you feel your muscles contracting towards your spine, okay? Now that's not the lift, that's just the preparation for the lift. So move your muscles towards your spine. Now you're ready to lift the front of your chest away from the mat, getting into your spinal column muscles and then lowering back down. So you keep those shoulder muscles active to keep the shoulders away from the floor. Nice muscle tone in your legs. Nice muscle tone in your glutes to keep your pubic bone heavy on the mat. We don't want to lift the legs as we're lifting the trunk. That might put too much strain on your back muscles. Keep your shoulders active, or the muscles that bring your shoulders away from the floor active. And the effort of your spinal erector muscles is ramping up and ramping down. Let's do two more. And one more of those. And then lowering down, overlap your hands, let your forehead rest on your hands and swish your hips from side to side. Now, let's come up onto our forearms, okay? And your legs can be a little bit wider than hips distance if that feels comfortable for you, right? Your elbows could be a little bit wider than your shoulders if that feels comfortable for you, okay? And so what I want you to do first and foremost is to figure out the right muscular activation to give the pubic bone a firm press into the floor, right? So that is your glutes that do that, right? So you want to, but it's also the tone of your low abdominals. So the combination of your glutes and low abdominals keeps your pubic bone firmly planted on the ground, right? Now the trick is, can you maintain that muscular tension and then be a little bit looser in your neck and shoulders? Because what we're going to do here is a little bit of movement side to side through our upper body without losing our grounding of our pubic bone. So what I'm doing here is one shoulder is drawing back as the other shoulder goes forward. I'm letting my head turn a little bit from side to side. And I feel that movement transmitted through my ribs. So we're just trying to loosen up the body, but we still are using our strength, right? We have to use some strength, otherwise we would fall down. So we have to hold ourselves up and figure out how to move. Let's do one more from side to side. And then let's lower all the way down, overlap our hands, rest the forehead, and swish those hips from side to side. Perfect. We have just enough time to grab our straps. So let's come off of our bellies and come on to your back with a pillow, if you like a pillow, and your yoga belt. And we'll finish with a crossover stretch. Crossover stretch. So using your pillow if that feels good to you. You don't need it if you don't want it. Let's go ahead and lasso the right foot into your strap, holding your strap in a way where you are not overstretching your muscles, you're not straining your muscles, right? So making sure that your loop is the right size for your flexibility or for your lack of flexibility. Just be honest. Whatever it is what it is, right? Okay. So I've got my left hand is holding the strap. My right arm is out to the side. Now, I'm not going to collapse my leg into the strap. I'm going to use my muscles, right, to take my leg over and go into this rotation. And the strap is simply going to help me to make that hopefully more pleasurable, more enjoyable. So my right arm is reaching out to the side in counterbalance. Got nice muscle tone in my left leg. And I'm going to bring my right leg across, elongating the muscles of my outer hip and thigh. And with control, I'm going to keep going with that and introduce rotation. I'm not trying to force my body into something that isn't appropriate. Just working my way around into a twist. Allowing my spinal vertebra to gently shift and come into rotation, which is something that the human spine does very, very well. Not all animals twist well, but human beings can twist, and our chests are actually quite twistable. If your right shoulder came off the ground, that's okay, right? Do what you can to get it closer, but don't force anything. Let's take one more breath in this twist. And then we're going to use our muscles to bring ourselves out of that twist and release that right foot from the strap. And then let's go ahead and lasso that left foot, adjusting the size of the loop to be appropriate for your flexibility or lack of flexibility, right? Make it work for you. Hold the strap with your right hand, reach your left arm out to the side for counterbalance. You want to have good muscle tone in your body so that you can control this, right? That beautiful balance between suppleness and strength. As the leg reaches its maximum stretch, the pelvis begins to turn, the spine begins to rotate. We allow for that lengthening of the muscles. We're not forcing, we're being smart about it. And something you might not even be thinking about is, what are you doing with the right leg, right? It might be you're not even thinking about the right leg. What does it feel like to extend through the right leg as you rotate? It feels kind of interesting, right? It sort of stimulates the whole core in that twist. to reach long through that right leg. Not the leg that's crossed over, but the other one. Let's take a couple of breaths. And then begin to work your way back out of that rotation wisely using your strength. When you get back to the center, you can release that left foot from the strap. Let's just put the strap off to the side for a moment, stretch out our arms and legs and lay on the floor. And take a moment or two to just lay here and sense your whole body. A general sense of awareness of your body laying on the floor and feeling your body breathe. Let's take one more deep breath in and out. And then draw those legs up. Take a hold of your knees, gently cradling your legs, and start to circle the back of your pelvis against the floor. Noticing how you use your arms to generate this movement. Let's reverse that circling of the sacrum, the back of the pelvis against the floor. And then release those feet. Let's turn to our sides and come up and make our way to a seated position to close our practice. And I'm just going to end the recording for anybody that needs that later.